So we're live now, and everyone can see this now. And I said, don't slip up, don't mess up.
We're used to that.
And so I've been working on my impressions. But so this is live, and then we'll reshare and post it later. So I just want to I was just telling everybody a minute ago. So this is part of a Facebook Live conversation series I'm doing with different leaders. I see your phone go. And the topic is how the church is changing in 2020 and beyond. I knew the church was going to go through some changes. I think the first person I heard say it was Rick. Rick said about, I think it was around 10 years ago, he said in 10 years, the church was going to, I think he said, look fundamentally different. And he said, it's not going to be all the superficial stuff that you might think of, the surface level stuff, but there's some deep things, real substantial things that are changing about it. And I really was sensing it this year, and then COVID hit, and I thought, finally, an accelerant, and I really feel like the Lord, I'm not happy about COVID, but I really feel like the Lord is using COVID to break the churches out of our normal way of doing things, and trying to, like Tom said in his prophetic word, get our attention, because he's shifting us into some gear. So I want to hear more about that, Tom, in a little bit. So let me take a minute and just introduce you guys. So this is Tom Hardiman and his wife, Marianne. They direct the MorningStar Fellowship of Ministries and churches. Tom oversees a network of more than 500 pastors, churches, and ministries throughout the world. And they're both members of the senior leadership team at MorningStar's Fort Mill Church of Fort Mill, South Carolina. Tom and Marianne were senior pastors of 2 congregations in New Jersey before being supernaturally called to MorningStar in 2003. As a former Olympian and coach, Tom brings a wealth of team ministry to his messages. An inspirational speaker and a national leader, Tom travels extensively, preaching and conducting regional prophetic roundtables. These prophetic roundtables draw together individuals in understanding the times and seasons in which we live. So important. Tom's heart is to strengthen and equip ministers and congregations to have the most impact on the world for Christ. His burden is for the restoration of spiritual warriors so that they are healed, equipped, and building again. A gifted teacher, Marianne has a passion to educate our nation about America's true spiritual foundations. She travels with her husband and is a frequent speaker at MFM conferences. Previously a teacher at the Comenius School for Creative Leadership, Marianne is also the director of MorningStar's women's ministry, Shine. Marianne's desire is to raise strong women leaders and to see people discover their purpose and vision to become effective kingdom builders. The Hardimans have 3 married children and 3 grandchildren. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. I miss seeing you guys so much. I'm glad you're here.
We're so glad for the technology that we can see people during this whole time, because we just have not been traveling. So it's great to see you. We're hoping that eventually we can see, everybody in person again, but we'll see.
It's been quite a season.
Yeah.
And so our travel, like everybody else's, has been greatly curtailed. I don't think we've left MorningStar since March. And but it has had a way of redirecting and recapturing some of the things that are important to the Lord. So we feel like there, when you mentioned the word accelerant, we got a word probably 6 months ago that God was going to slow us down so he could speed us up. And we feel like we have been in that season where there's been a forced slowdown, but what's coming behind that is a real acceleration.
That's wonderful. That's great. Oh, good. Then we're hearing right. So I want to ask you guys some questions, and we'll just do this like a conversation, but I want to hear from you. What do you feel like some of the fundamental changes are that God is bringing to the church?
Well, I feel like what we're facing right now in this season, and I just alluded to it last Sunday, is God has indeed gotten our attention. And I feel like this is worldwide, larger than just the movements that we would be familiar with. I'm talking about denominations, and I'm talking about movements, some of which have many people would be considered that they're dead. When we're talking about changes that are in the church, I feel like God is going to be drilling down into movements that have not been moving, or that people feel have been forsaken. And he is going to be stirring the hearts of people who have been distracted, been disinterested, and he's going to move in those kinds of movements. And in a larger sense, in the movements that we would be connected with or be familiar with, where we would find cutting edge prophetic words, there's going to be a significant emergence of great leaders and a significant acceleration of those movements. Bob Jones said that Marianne's really familiar with this, about the emergence of apostolic chiefs in this time. And this is, I think, what we're witnessing.
I think that's right. I think that's right, because I think that's not to overemphasize apostolic leadership, but I think that's kind of I don't want to say the last ingredient, but before you can have a fivefold integration, you have to have all five. And yeah, so I've just been seeing that, because I believe it's going to fundamentally change how the paradigm that we're operating in and from. You guys know Ramses down there, Ramses Gergis, right? I read an article in a magazine that he had written, and he was talking about infinite scalability. And I love that term. If there's ever been an apostolic term, it's infinite scalability. I realized that's what happens when apostles return to the church, to church leadership, apostolic authority and vision, because when that happens, the ceilings come off, and we reach unlimited potential. Now we can go on and on and on in whatever it is we're trying to, whatever the Lord's called us to do. And I think we see that in Isaiah, in the prophecy about the Lord, when it says that of the increase of his government and of peace, there shall be no end. So not just so there's no end to the increase. So there's a continual increase or advance. And I just get excited thinking about what the Lord's about to do with the church, because we've had these caps on that I think in many ways have kept apostles and prophets and even a lot of people from operating and being who they are. And so I think the apostolic chiefs is right on.
Joseph, Bob Jones used to do the fivefold ministry, with the hand, and he'd say the apostle is the only one that can touch all the other ministries. And so I'm just showing this because this is what Bob used to do, to us. But when that prophecy about when the apostolic chiefs, when the Kansas Chiefs would win the Super Bowl, it would be the emergence of the true apostolic chiefs. And so we saw that back in early February of 2020. And so when that prophecy happened, and they were the Super Bowl winners and all, everybody was looking at these past prophecies. And I think we need to go back and look at that, because truly, I believe there are new apostles that are emerging in the body of Christ. That will be the builders. That will be the that will rally the people. That will gather them together. And I look at it as Nehemiah, and he was one of the last, I would say, apostolic builders of the Old Testament here. And when he was sent to Jerusalem, he was literally sent to rebuild the walls of salvation, the gates of praise. And he did this in 52 days. He did this when in hundreds of years it had not been done. You know, the walls were broken and the gates were burnt with fire. And so there's a whole lot in that Nehemiah is both a builder and he's an apostle. And so that book is really important right now as we see those apostolic chiefs emerge. But it's also a time, and that whole book right now, where we're building and we're fighting. You know, we have to take a stand. We have to discern how the enemy is trying to infiltrate even the church. You know, so I'm taking it as a prophetic viewpoint, but yet that I feel was a demarcation point for 2020. And so I see now that there are more apostolic chiefs that are emerging, young and old. It doesn't matter what your age is, but I feel that they're coming to the forefront. And, you know, Rick in the past has said, you know, over the years, you could throw a stone in a congregation and hit an apostle or a prophet, because everybody was calling themselves that.
Yeah.
But I don't believe they were true apostolic leaders and true prophetic voices. And you're seeing a demarcation point. So I think this is what 2020 has been, a demarcation point for the church. You know, even with COVID, with the with our lockdown, I believe what it has done is removed a lot of the extraneous, and we're able to focus. That's what the Lord was. I feel it's like a Hebrews 12 moment where we have to run the race and without the weight of sin or the weight of distraction. And so I think that's what the Lord's focusing on, really, is to get the body of Christ in shape to run that race, so we don't have all of the sin or the weight that has distracted us for so long. So he's making us really focusing in on what the true matter is.
So when Marianne is talking about Nehemiah, I've heard her say that he's the prototype of the New Testament apostle. And he's prefiguring the apostolic in that the Nehemiah's ministry was to guard the king.
True.
And give his heart to the king. And he earned over a long period of time, by his faithfulness to the king, he earned to have the ear of the king, and then the king helped him build what he wanted to be building.
Yeah, but he was faithful for a long time in that position before he was sent out to be that builder. So
yeah, and I've also heard Marianne say this, and what I do believe, Joseph, is that these apostolic chiefs have been hidden for this time. And what we're seeing is the emergence of them. They have been around, but they've just been hidden by the Lord. It's an Isaiah 49 moment where the Lord shapes an arrow and then he hides it in his quiver.
But they've been faithful, and I think that's key. They haven't deserted their post. They've been faithful. If you want to say in the little things, they've been faithful to do the tasks that the Lord has given them in that time. And now he's promoting them. And so I see this, you know, all over the body of Christ, that there are those that are emerging at this time in these positions.
And some of them they're no-name people. This is what Paul Cain was saying concerning a prophetic word that he gave years ago. He said that there was going to be a nameless, faceless group. And I do believe that some of the most influential who have been hidden as they emerge, people are going, who is this person? And I think it's what we're watching, and I'm really encouraged by this, is we're watching men and women with apostolic authority pop up, and it's significant, the voices. We just spent some time yesterday talking to a couple, and I do believe that the woman, although her husband is becoming well known, she is an apostolic emerging voice. It's really quite impressive, honestly.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I think you're right about some being hidden, a lot of them being hidden for the right time. You know, at the right time, God sent His Son into the world, and I think one of the other things that's happened is I feel like there's a lot of apostolic leaders and prophets as well, but that have been in process for a long time. They've received the call, and they've been in process for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And I think a lot of times, I think the people that we label false apostles and false prophets, or maybe we're not labeling them false, we're just saying they're not real, you know, they're not authentic, or they're not walking in that authority, is just because they haven't hit their commissioning yet, you know, which I think is true a lot of times, or they're just, you know, they're kind of immature, they're not really growing in it, maybe they're not being mentored in it or something like that. And of course, that's a mentoring, finding people to mentor apostles and prophets can be difficult enough. And so I think you're right. I think there's an emergence of those that are being hidden, and an emergence of those that are emerging because of their commissioning.
Yeah.
They've finally given the final yes to God or whatever, and now it's lining up with the season, like with the prophetic word. It's interesting that you guys said that the word or the word and the team won in February, and then March was shut down. It was like February was the announcement, and March was the invitation to the transition for what we're doing, what we're seeing.
Yeah. You know, I do feel if we're reading the signs correctly, there's messages in these things that we need to interpret. And so when I gave this prophetic word about now that I have your attention, if we look from March now to where we are now, what I witnessed is a number of people that we're connected with that weren't quite as focused or as given God the attention that He wanted. And what I saw happen is people that weren't even going to church that we knew would be contacting us, and God was getting their attention. And the concern and the pastoral concern that I have is we don't want to let this teachable moment pass us by and not capture what the Lord is saying in this time. And I feel like Marian has already said, laying aside the weights, and we're not talking about things that are, we're talking about distractions. And I think that for 80% of the believers, they're not necessarily entrenched in habitual sin, but they're consumed with distractions, and we don't give the appropriate amount of attention. And so when we're talking about the future of the church, I think the message out of this season is to lay those things aside.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. I shared this word on a podcast this morning, and then I think with Carla or someone the other day, I had received a prophetic word a number of years ago. And what I keep finding the Lord doing these days is I feel like He's repurposing prophecy. There's things that there were prophetic words that I received. Yeah, there were words that I received a long time ago that were for me, and I hear the Lord bringing them back, but it's for the church now. It's not just for me. And one of those words, I think, is in line with what you're saying, Marianne, about laying aside the weights that so, the sin and the weights, but especially the weights. And the prophetic word that I shared on this podcast this morning was the prophetic word was, man has been trying to place upon you that which you must not do.
Good.
And so there's these these expectations of man for a number of different reasons. I've seen it in various contexts and interpretations, but constantly man putting expectations upon us, saying this is what an apostle is, this is what a pastor is, or this is, if you really loved God, you would do this ministry, not go run that business, or just so many different applications. But the question is, are we following the Holy Spirit, or are we just following the expectations of man, which is just the fear of man?
Yeah, that's.
And so laying aside those weights.
Joseph, we reevaluate what we're doing every year. That at the end of each year, we reassess, we go back and see how the Lord's been speaking to us, either in prophetic words or the messages that have come forth, or the messages that we brought forth, because many times the Lord is speaking to us through our messages as well. And so we don't want to be distracted. When you're saying man's purposes, sometimes we do a good thing and we're doing stuff that is fruitful, but is it exactly what the Lord has for you in this season? And so we always reassess. And, I said to Tom, well, let's do this in January. He says, no, we need to do this in December. So in January, we're able to get back on course if we need to, because I think what we need to do is to refocus and to discern exactly the tasks, if you want, as to how the Lord is leading each of us. What's our purpose? What's our destiny? Are we moving in that direction, or have we spread out so that everything is diluted and we're not focusing, we're not laser sharp? And I think that is, what do they call that? Ministry spread, or there's a term, I'll think of it probably after this broadcast, but a mission spread, where you literally, you start out laser focused and then you're just doing 5 or 6 different things that you think is the purpose, but yet it has spread you so thin, you're no longer laser focused. Yeah. So it's really good to do that each year, to reassess and to see, are you actually doing what God has called you to do? And I think it's easy to get distracted throughout the year.
Yeah. Who wrote The Cross and the Switchblade?
David Wilkerson.
David Wilkerson. I had a brain fog there for a minute. But David Wilkerson had a really, really successful launch of his ministry. And it was Teen Challenge. He wrote several different prophetic books. He founded Times Square Church and all those other things. And had a profound impact with ministry. Near the end of a season in that ministry, however, I heard him write or talk about the success of his ministry was overtaking him in ministry, and he began to be more of a manager of the ministry than he was of answering the call of God in his life. And so he had to lay aside some of the things, some of the very good things that were being required of him in order for him to fulfill the call of God as God designed it for him in the origins of it. And so I kind of feel like on what we're talking about here, there are people that are going to be tuning in or already tuned in, and some adjustments, the subtle adjustments that God wants, can have a profound increase in their fruitfulness if they will take the time to hear God. I remember David Wilkerson talking about this or writing about it, and one of the reasons I remember it is it was impacting me. I'm saying I probably have been guilty of the very thing that he's talking about.
I feel that in 2020, the Lord is really trying to streamline not only people individually, but the body of Christ. Yes, the church is going to look differently. There are some states that still churches can't gather. There are others that, can only have half capacity. And there are others that are going to sell churches. So all of this, I don't know exactly how it's going to look, but I think the Lord is really trying to streamline things. Here at MorningStar, we're still able to meet, in our building, and we are at full capacity. I mean, we've even had conferences, which I'm amazed at. People are coming from all over. And it's remarkable.
We had a conference, and there was 1,200 people here. It was like, people are really hungry.
They are.
There's a resurgence of hunger, and the thing that really caught our attention, Joseph, was 80% of the people that were attending
the Advanced Prophetic.
No, it wasn't the Advanced Prophetic. It was the Heart of David conference. 80% of them had never been to a MorningStar conference before. It's like the curiosity level in the church is way up.
Wow.
And it may be because people cannot gather like they used to. Maybe, but when they see that there is a gathering, they want to hear what the prophets are saying. And, Rick has a prophetic voice, and he's not shy about what the Lord is doing or what to say. And so I do feel that there is an increased hunger in God's people, really, not only to see an authentic Christianity, where they're preaching kingdom gospel, because I feel that has not been preached, across the states, if you want to say that, or there are some that are doing that, but they also want to see a demonstration of God's power. And so I think if you want to say curiosity, but the hunger is starting to ratchet up. So it's very interesting that the government is almost suppressing, the gathering, and yet the hunger is increasing. So it's a dichotomy. It's just interesting. I don't know where this is going to take us, but I do know that God's glory is coming. Isaiah 60. You see darkness abounding, increasing, deep darkness upon the people. Oh my goodness. All you have to do is look at the news, and we don't watch the news that much anymore, But on the other hand, Isaiah 60 says that arise, shine, for your glory will come, and the glory of the Lord will rise upon you. And so there is that glory that's coming to the church. I don't know what the church is going to look like, but I think we're going to be laser sharp in pursuing the Lord.
I don't want to get ahead of your questions, but when Marianne said she doesn't know what the church is going to look like, I had a word. I came into MorningStar on a Sunday morning, and I had no official role in the service. And so, to be honest with you, I was just kind of looking. I was kind of enjoying the moment of not having responsibility. And the Lord started opening my ears to the roar of Niagara Falls. And I went to college about 20 miles from Niagara Falls, and I could almost literally hear the roar of Niagara. I had been there many times in college. And the Lord started telling me about the power of Niagara coming to MorningStar and coming to the church in general, and that place Niagara Falls lit up the whole region, and that there's that kind of power that's going to be released in the church. Unprecedented power that seemingly will have no end. There's a lot of there's a lot of things in that analogy concerning Niagara Falls. I do believe it's like I could not put into words what I was seeing coming. It was so powerful, so overwhelming, and honestly, you can hear the roar of Niagara sometimes for miles away, and the mist that comes off of Niagara keeps everybody wet all the time. I mean, and so there was several levels of interpretation that I began to understand about that, but it's coming to the church. But what surprised me about all of it was that it was beyond the description that I could give to it in terms of words. It was like I never anticipated anything like this, way more than what I anticipated.
You know, just thinking, words inexpressible, and the Lord talking to you about this. And I'm thinking about Jesus when Lazarus died, and he's trying to talk to the disciples and explain to them what's happening. And, there's the third kind of you could call it the third heaven level, where Jesus is always talking out of here, this truth and substance is very revelatory. Down here, it's very earthly, natural, and it's all about the facts. And here he is saying, well, Lazarus is sleeping. And they're saying, well, then he'll get better. And he's saying, well, no, let me explain. He's dead. So Jesus had to bring down what he was saying to the natural, but it was actually less true when he explained it, because Jesus was the resurrection. So instead of, we always want him to come down to us, and he's saying, no, come up here. I want to show you something. You have to learn to the language of the Spirit. You have to be able to receive things and operate up here and follow me up here, rather than keep expecting me to explain things, because they lose their substance and their weightiness and the truth, the true essence of what it is, when he brings it down and explains it in natural words. So yeah, I just see the Lord, bringing you up in that and talking to you up here. You might not, people might have to do more catching of that than actually learning, so to speak.
Yeah, it's going to overtake us. And, one of the things that when I began to research Niagara Falls, is that it's as high as it is deep. It's like 187 feet high. And when the water comes down, it's still about 183 feet deep. And so to me, that's what God's going to be doing with the church. People are going to be having these supernatural experiences. They're going to take them into a really high place. But also God's going to be drilling down and into the very deep part of individuals. So there's, what I was amazed about is that 90% of the fish that go over Niagara Falls live. And it's the way that the fish in that section of the rivers of Niagara, that they're birthed in those areas. When they go over, they're conditioned with pressure so that they can endure what is about ready to happen to them. And I feel like the birthing of the people of God in the future, there's going to be external pressures that society or circumstances have brought to them, but they're going to be able to endure some things that most individuals could not endure. And so to me, it's like the retention rate of the conversions of the fish are going to be a whole lot greater than we've experienced in the past. I told MorningStar on Sunday when I preached, I said, you better get ready to be shoulder to shoulder in this place, because this place is going to get filled up with people. And I said, You better not get too comfortable in your chairs, because people are going to be coming in wanting to take your chair.
Well, I think Rick also prophesied this. And, you know, when you're talking about repurposing prophecies, I think some of these older prophecies are now we're starting to see the beginning of that being fulfilled. And he used to say, you know, the next small is big, or the next big is small. How
Yeah.
did he say that? That's like that.
Small
Meaning,
now, big later.
yes.
Small is
Yeah, small, thank you. It's been so long, I haven't gotten it right, but nevertheless, these smaller churches are going to grow very quickly with the influx of new salvations. And even he said the bigger churches are not going to grow nearly as big. They'll still be big, but it's the small ones that are going to be really powerfully in a growth cycle. I think we're going to come to that time, and I think it's just that the hunger is going to really increase with people. So what is the church going to look like in 2020? I think different than what we are experiencing right now. I think there's going to be a genuineness, not that the Christians aren't genuine now, but I think a real genuine hunger where people are so desiring for the intimacy of God and a genuine faith, you know, that's born out of that hunger.
You know, Joseph, I had the Lord speak to me at I think it was during Harvest Fest, which was just a week and a half ago. And he showed me the early 1900s and how everything shifted in the 20th century, so much so that we started out without automobiles, and we wound up with space shuttles and going to Mars. And I mean, going to the moon, at least. Going to the moon, but we sent some probes to Mars. And I saw this person in the early 1900s trying to get his Model T running, and it was laborious, but how rapidly things changed. And then the Lord started telling me that this decade of 2020 to 2030, although there was great accomplishments in the 100 years in the 20th century, God was going to change the church that much in one decade. Between 2020 and 2030, there was going to be that kind of acceleration and that kind of change that would come to the church. And so it baffled that kind of picture. Just it was just hard to believe. That kind of change.
I really believe that. I think I think the problem is that the church has stopped following the Lord and started following the culture. And that's why we're always behind in culture, and we're always living in reaction to culture, to what the world's doing. And something I find myself saying a lot is that anytime the church is not busy discipling the world ends up discipling the church. And so we're just kind of in reaction. We're always, you know, like 20 years behind, you know, whatever the world's doing. What kind of leadership do you feel like the church needs over these next 10 years for all these changes that are taking place to get?
I just finished a course called The New Breed Leaders, and it's like 14 or 15 half-hour teachings. And so what I do in the course is I go through, and this course actually came out of a prophetic experience that I had when we were in Colombia, in Bogota. And I think that what I'm going to say is the condition of lots of leaders out there. We were asked to come to Bogota to do a teaching on the prophetic, and the whole conference was structured around the prophetic. And right before we were to get up on the first night of the conference, the Lord spoke to me and said, "You can't minister on the prophetic until you deal with their trauma." And we spent the next couple sessions just dealing with the trauma of the leaders in the nation. And as we were imparting hope, God began to download some things about a new breed of leaders that were emerging. Like Nehemiah, they have been faithful to the king, but they haven't had an avenue to express the real calling that they had. And in that particular atmosphere, they have endured difficulty, hardship, resistance, and some level of brokenheartedness. But so I go through in this course, The New Breed of Leaders, some of the characteristics that will be present in the lives of these leaders. And the number one thing that I present is they need to have courage.
I was going to say boldness. There's going to be a fiery boldness. You remember when the apostles prayed for boldness, what happened? The earth shook.
Yeah.
And, just at MorningStar,
Yeah.
Rick was preaching, and at the end of his message, he prayed and he said, Lord, let that fiery boldness come upon us so that we could preach a kingdom message. And he prayed an amazing prayer, but that was the essence of it. And that next Sunday here in North Carolina, you may have even felt it in Virginia, because I think it was in Salisbury. No, I'm not sure where the origination was, but Spartanburg, yes, North Carolina.
South Carolina, Spartanburg.
Okay, I got it wrong. So Spartanburg, South Carolina, we had a 5.1 earthquake, and we felt it here in Charlotte. Yeah. It was a Sunday morning, and at around 8 o'clock in the morning, I literally was shaken out of my chair. And I jumped up. I was so startled. And then, we've had some renovations done in our house here. And as I'm going around touching up the paint, I'm seeing that there are cracks in the window frame molding and in the door moldings. And I'm thinking, these weren't here before. This happened during that earthquake. But literally the ground shook, and we do believe it was an answer to that prayer that Rick prayed, that he would fill us with this boldness. And so I really feel that there's going to be a fiery boldness come upon the preacher, that there's going to be no fear of man, but they're going to go forth with great expectation and great results.
Didn't the earthquake happen at 8:08?
I want to say 8:12, but I'm not sure. So yeah, a new breed of leader and a bold, fiery anointing upon them all.
So I go through in that course a whole range. The course is presently available through MorningStar, but what we have done is I'm going to reshoot the whole course. And it has to do with camera angles and that sort of stuff. They think that we could do better. The content will pretty much remain the same. One of the things that I have received feedback from those that have already accessed the course is I was sitting with a young lady, and she was saying, I can't believe you were speaking to me in this course. And she said, one of the things that I violated, and this is what God told Joshua, not only to be strong and of good courage, but he told Joshua, don't turn from the right or the left. Don't turn to the right. And staying on course for the call of God that's in our life. One of the reasons why Nehemiah was so blessed, in the season of the absence of the presence of God, he stayed on course.
So true.
And so that's hard to do. And that's honestly what I'm going to touch on Sunday. I've been asked to follow up my message from last Sunday, this Sunday, and one of the things I'm going to talk about is staying on course. Decisions that we're making right now. I do touch on decision making for leaders in this course. Being a good decision maker, making good judgments, can spare you all kinds of grief. And the people that follow us and the people that we're going to have influence over, and there are large groups of people that are going to be following credible leaders. We owe it to them to make godly and good decisions, so that that which God is asking us to lead not only affects our own life, but it affects the lives of the people that we're following. And so we need to call it. Wisdom is crying out in the streets.
Yes.
This is Psalm 1, or Proverbs 1. And we need to capture that woman of wisdom that is so exquisitely spoken of in the book of Proverbs.
That's good. Yeah, I was talking with someone today about like fivefold equipping gifts, leadership gifts, and I say these are leadership gifts. I said we usually drop the leadership from the term. We don't realize that just because you have a gift from the Lord doesn't mean you don't have to learn what it means to be a leader. You still have to develop yourself as a leader. So you can be a prophet, but you still need to be a leader. You can be an apostle or a pastor or evangelist, but you still need to learn leadership. It's not automatic. You don't just get that with your lens and your value system. You have to learn it. You have to, it takes time.
Well, one of the things that we know, that you know, is there's a definite distinction between our gift and our character. And in the qualifications for a New Testament leader that Paul writes to Timothy about and he writes to Titus about, most of the qualifications are not gift related, they're character centered. And we need more people that can cradle the gift of God in their soul with good character. And I do believe that this is one of the strong characteristics of a new breed of leaders, is they're going to have the correct amount of strong character traits that will help them cradle the gift of God that he's given them.
That's good. I like that. That's good. Well, let me ask you this. Moving forward, especially over these next few years, next 10 years, is there any thinking or theology that the church has that if we don't change it will keep us from moving forward?
Interesting question.
Well,
is there any type of thinking that's kind of holding us back?
Well, some of our theology really needs to be re-examined, particularly when it comes to eschatology. MorningStar is not, we don't have an escapeology mentality. It is my persuasion, and one of the things I need to say about our eschatology is Rick and our team have variety of nuances to our end time understanding. Mm-hmm. And so we're not dogmatic about our position, and we do entertain and hear other points of view. But one of the common areas that we do share in terms of our eschatology is that the timing of the rapture to pull the church out 7 years prior to the Great Tribulation is not something that MorningStar would ascribe to. We do feel that there are times of tribulation that are coming. And I think that, and I've done an extensive study on this, I think that part of the belief system that needs to be adjusted, that we need to counter, is that God is going to pull everybody out. There's going to be no difficulties that the Christians are going to face because they get pulled out. And so that's, to me, that teaching needs to really be challenged. And so I find a lot of inconsistencies in that sort of teaching. And again, Marianne and I have taught, when we were in Denmark, we taught extensively on end time doctrine. And I have a series here at MorningStar on the time of the end. And our approach is different to some extent than Rick's, and he permits that. although in general we agree on our eschatology, there are nuances to some of the things that I believe that Rick may not, or Justin Perry may not, or even Marianne may not. But nevertheless, in general, we have concluded that the teaching of the rapture happening 7 years before the Great Tribulation is not something that we encourage, because we feel it actually leads into and promotes lukewarmness.
I'd add to that,
Yeah.
Joseph, in that, a religious spirit, that thinking is not going to get us where we need to go. It was the religious people of the day that did not recognize Jesus that missed the time of his visitation. And I would say that many that are going to come into the kingdom are going to come from many different groups that we would never expect, and may not have your kind of thinking, not meaning you, but our kind of thinking, and could actually be very offensive. And so, at the time of the end, many will be offended and fall away. And I feel that a religious spirit will enable that offense. And so I don't want to miss, I want to guard myself against not only an offense, but a religious spirit. And I'll tell you why. One of the very last things that Jesus refused on the cross was the gall. And it's my belief that we're always going to have these tests, but at the very end of our lives, the age, the tendency is to become bitter because of life's disappointments or maybe regrets or whatever. And we want to refuse that bitterness. We want to refuse the regret. And just like Jesus refused to drink that gall, I think, we need to be on guard about offenses, which can turn into bitterness, but also that religious spirit that would cause us to miss what God is doing.
Yeah, that's really good.
So
those are some of the things that we see coming.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. Is there anything that you'd like to mention that you guys are doing, something coming up, or anything at all, whether it's an event or anything? I know you mentioned the course, and you said that was available now, even though you're going to reshoot it. Yeah,
it's still available, and they're just using better camera angles and those sorts of things. So the content's going to pretty much remain the same. But we've learned that we're doing more online courses. Marianne's done a course called You May All Prophesy. It's just been translated, it's just now available in Spanish, and we have lots of contacts in South America that will make that available to them. But the feedback that we have gotten from the course that Marianne's done is phenomenal. And it makes it a user-friendly gift.
Sure, but it's not just me either. It's Tom, it's Justin Perry. We interview Rick and go into some of the prophetic history, with Bob Jones and with others. And it really is fascinating. It was really fun to do, but it does make it really user-friendly. And, again, the prophetic is part of MorningStar's DNA. And Rick has really promoted that ever since MorningStar began. But yet some people have held it off, kept it at an arm's length. And I think this course is probably going to really tear down any kind of obstacles, because we do a biblical foundation and then go into how the Lord uses you prophetically, or can use you prophetically, with lots of examples, lots of biblical examples. And so it's a good thing. And then, so the other courses that Tom had mentioned, he also has the Judgment Seat of Christ available, which is a phenomenal teaching course. And I think right now you can either do that digitally, or there's DVDs or something.
There's a way to order through MorningStar that
I don't know if anybody's using DVDs anymore, but I think you can do it digitally. And so that makes it a really easy way. We're trying to keep up with the technology. And so it's a good thing. So
And finally, I just met with, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
you're good.
I've already put together this course on pastoring and the role of local leaders. What this course entails is actually when we stand before the Lord, we're going to give an account. And so I go through the history of the Old Testament and some of the criticisms, the critiques, and the rebukes that happened to poor leaders in the Old Testament. I page forward into the New Testament when Jesus is talking to Peter about his assignment. He says, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, two different assignments, two different Greek words. One's bosco, the other's pormeno. It's feeding and caring for. And so I go through this whole thing about feeding the flock, different techniques that you can have, different how you work that gift, how to feed a flock, not just personally in terms of week to week, but the spreading out of the feeding throughout a whole year period of time. And we go through the care of the flock. We compare like life coaches to the assignment of local church leaders. It really is a very interesting approach. And honestly, you would probably be aware of this, but lots of leaders that we would contact, you would contact, I would contact, do not have a clear understanding of what the job assignment is. And so there's about 15 words in the New Testament that describe the job assignment. It's not complicated, but lots of leaders are unaware of the full scope of what we're asked to do. And then I get into dividing up the different levels of responsibility between the senior leaders and the support team. It's interesting.
That's good. And then lastly, we have an upcoming conference, which is our New Year's conference. We call it the Vision Conference. That's always an amazing conference. We do have a gentleman who ministered at our Advanced Prophetic, Chris Reed, who's has an incredible prophetic gift. He'll be back. We've got Jerry Boykin. We've got Star General. He began the Delta Force, the Special Forces. Janet Porter, who is the author of the Heartbeat Bill, she'll be there, and another local pastor, Larry Jackson, who will be there. It's going to be a good conference, but you can also watch it online. So, thank God for the technology during this time, which, even you're doing the Facebook Live right now and the podcast. Thank God, because now you can reach more people. That is also how I think the church is going to be changing in the 21st century. We're going to be doing more online things that will take our voices further out to the world.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It's great. Well, thank you. I'm going to look for some of those resources you made on the website. I want to post those in the comments so people can find them. But I really appreciate you guys being on. It's really good to see you and to hear from you. We have to be hearing from the Lord about how to move forward, and MorningStar is, that's your thing.
It's critical.
So,
well, give our love
that's
to
great.
Carla.
Well, thank you again. I will. And I'll just mention to those watching and those seeing the video later, that we have another Facebook Live conversation tonight at 7 p.m. with Dr. Svetlana Papazov from Real Life Church in Richmond, Virginia, author of Church for Monday. So that's going to be fun. You can join us at 7 p.m. if you're watching. And but thank you guys. Bless you. And I hope we could get to see your faces in person again.
Yeah,
soon.
hopefully.
Sure. All right. Bless you, Joseph.
Bless you.
Take care.
Bye.